What's up, everyone? Just getting started here. Let me see. Hopefully this is gonna work well. Jesus loves you. Thanks, Hannah. Ooh, what was that noise? Someone did something. I'm just setting up the stream to go on YouTube and Facebook at the same time. So let's see. Hopefully everyone's doing good today. Let me get the link to the live stream. Oh, this is fantastic, guys. So perfect. All right, now I can see the chat, although this other chat window is not going. But anyway, thanks for hopping on, everyone. So for people that are new, what I mostly talk about is tech sales and how to get into tech sales. So what is tech sales? I've got a bunch of videos on it. It's B2B, B2B sales, business to business. So you're selling software to other businesses as opposed to consumers. So when most people think of sales, they think of car sales or insurance sales. You know, really, we're not interested in that. Or at least I'm not interested in it. I'm too much of an introvert. I don't like doing high pressure sales techniques. So I'm selling software to other businesses. So let me see. Hey, Isabella, make sure all these questions are coming through. How long did I spend as a BDR? it was either 8 or 9 months. So actually I ended up getting promoted pretty quickly. When I joined, I first started off on the technical support side as an application engineer. It's a fancy name for tech support, and realized that I saw there were a few people in the BDR role who were in it for over 2 years and they were already getting burned out. So I made a point to get promoted as quickly as I could. So I basically doubled all the metrics that they wanted me to hit for number of calls and emails, and I was able to over exceed and get promoted at the top of the promotion pipeline there. Great question. Let me see, am I getting these other questions? Great, awesome. Okay, cool. And then, yeah, so for people that don't know, I launched a totally free program called Tech Sales U. I was working with Bravado to get this launched. And it's a 5-week self-paced program, and it's aimed at helping you understand all the basics about the tech sales industry, how to interview for these roles, and the goal is to get you into one of these entry-level roles. You don't need to pay for an expensive boot camp or anything like that. It's literally $0. It's totally free. The link is in the bio if you want to check that out. My major was biomedical engineering. You definitely don't need to have a college degree. Actually, I know plenty of sales reps that have no degree at all. And then if you do have a degree, it doesn't have to be like a super technical engineering degree. Like I originally wanted to go to medical school. My degree has absolutely no relevance to my day-to-day job right now. Starting positions commission only, no. Starting positions in tech sales, pretty much all the jobs are going to have a base salary. So typically for the entry-level role, it's like 60 to 100K total pay, and about 70% of that is going to be base salary. Once you're in sales, are you stuck or can you pivot out of it to a different tech role? Yeah, you can absolutely pivot out. You don't need to stay in sales. What's great is what you learn in sales is um, very transferable. So all the personal skills, the team management skills that you learn, they're going to help you in any other role within like a corporate environment. Um, when I think about, for example, one of the companies I used to work at was Google, and I think over half of my colleagues from a few years ago are no longer in sales. They moved into other parts of the company, like marketing, and so on. So, ideal income and down payment for $1 million home. So that question is going to really depend on, actually the location is going to matter quite a bit. Some areas, some states have much higher property taxes than others. But let's say if it was like Texas for $1 million home, you're looking at probably like an $8,000 payment. Down payment, if you're at a jumbo mortgage, is going to be at least 10%. Some lenders are going to want you to do 15% or 20%. But so you're looking at 100K down payment, and then for that income, right? You have to look at the debt to income ratio. So I think it's going to be about 240K to be at that number. Landed your first SE position. Unfortunately, feels like an outside sales position with no leads. When you say SE, do you mean sales engineer? How much could you realistically expect to make in tech sales as an SDR remote? So you could realistically expect to make between 60 to 100K. The highest that I've seen for an SDR actually is 110K on target earnings. So that's how much you could make expect to make in a year. Any specific teams being affected by layoffs? Yeah, a lot of the layoffs right now are within marketing and actually HR and recruiting, and then some sales, but they're never going to lay off the entire sales team. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, happy to help. Oh, strategic sales executive. Yeah, honestly, with most like strategic or key account positions, like there's gonna be two situations. One, you're covering accounts that already have some sort of relationship with your company, and then you're working to expand the account. In other cases, you have a list. You might have like a couple of key accounts, and there's literally no meaningful spend within them. And you're absolutely right. A lot of times you have to kind of do the prospecting yourself. There's no leads. You kind of you've got all your eggs in one basket for the most part. Any specific company target as a starting SDR hit those numbers? Yeah, take a look at RepView. RepView has a list of like the top paying organizations, tech sales organizations, and you can break it down by different segments, including SDR, BDR. Any worries about Amazon layoffs? No. I mean, I think a lot of the tech companies they overhired a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know. It's kind of tricky. Personally, I think we're over the hurdle for inflation. So I think things are gonna make a drastic return back to normal quicker than a lot of people expect. So I don't think we're gonna see like extended layoffs, but we'll see. Thoughts on ADP as a sales org? I think ADP is relatively well ranked on RepView. That's usually the one of the main resources I check to see how well the sales organization is, percentage of reps that are hitting quota, and those sorts of things. Last time I checked, I think a few people asked me about ADP. I think they were fairly high. Been watching for a year, brother. Finally taking initiative. Awesome, man. Thanks. Love to hear it. Yeah, I've gotten quite a few people that have told me, that it's taken them like 6 months or a year to finally, make a move, but it's working out for them, which is great. So, it's never too late. Sometimes it takes a little bit of motivation to kind of actually get up and make that move, but. Oh no. Sorry guys, the I think my phone slid down and it hit the button. So let me get this back up here. All right, let's see. Let me get the chat feed back up. Okay, perfect. I think we're good to go. How can you get your resume noticed? You've been getting a lot of rejections. Great question. So the real answer is you don't want to be just submitting your application because it's usually just going to go into like a black box. Really, you need to get referrals, right? Especially for that first job. Referrals is super key, more important than ever, especially in a time right now when hiring is a little bit slower. You absolutely need to be prioritizing getting referrals. Best advice you give me starting in tech sales as SDR, first day is in 2 weeks. Great question. So absolutely what you need to do is you need to prioritize building out your network. Networking is going to be super important because that's how you're going to get promoted within the organization. It's a career, not like a get rich quick scheme or anything like that. So definitely prioritize networking with your direct team, especially when you become an account executive, right? You're going to be using and working with a bunch of other people across the organization to help you close deals. So that's going to be extremely important. Thoughts on sticking out the SSE position outside sales or look for a true AE inbound sale position? So here's the thing, pretty much any lucrative AE position is going to have a lot of, you're not going to be working just inbound leads for the most part. If you really want like an inbound sales position, you pretty much need to look at like an account manager position, right? So like the higher paying account executive positions, you're never actually really going to rely on the leads that you get from marketing or from SDRs. Like I never count on those for hitting my number. I just look at them as a nice bonus. So non-native English speakers ever successful in tech sales? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need to be proficient in English, but if you have an accent or anything like that, honestly, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. One thing that I've definitely noticed too is even on the customer side, there's a lot of non-native English speakers, right? So, if you know the product and you know the sales process, it's definitely not going to hold you back. If anything, it actually might help you. There's actually, being bilingual can certainly be helpful too. If, for example, a lot of like the big cloud companies, they have sales reps that specifically cover like Latin America, for example. So being able to speak Spanish plus English is actually going to be super helpful. How much caffeine do I drink per day? Good question, man. I probably do like 2 to 4 shots of espresso per day. Like I do it usually in a latte type drink. I'm not sure how many milligrams that translates to. Maybe maybe like 250 milligrams of caffeine. Nothing too crazy, honestly. How's the house in Texas going, brother? It's going. I think they keep on pushing it back. I'm gonna like flip out if they don't finish it by the end of the year. Hopefully that's what it's looking like. They're doing all the interior stuff right now. Hello from Austin, from a Chicago native. Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm a Chicago native. Was in Austin for a while, and then mostly back in Chicago. Best way to personalize your application when applying, emailing, hiring manager, etc. So the best way to personalize is to try to get a referral, right? So I have a few videos on how to get referrals. Even within the Tech Sales U program that I did, the free one, I have a section on getting referrals. So very, very important. That's really the best way to personalize for sure. Have I ever tried to sell a product that clearly wasn't ready? Absolutely, absolutely. So the cyber startup that I was at was super early. They had done like a pretty big pivot, and then also the fintech startup too. So yeah, it's gonna happen. Usually, especially early on, right? You know, you're still iterating on the product. The key is you don't want to like overpromise in terms of like features that the product doesn't have yet, but it does help be creative and kind of think about like, hey, we can't do this right now, but maybe we can fit it in this way, or you can kind of be creative. So you have to work closely with your sales engineer. In both cases, I was a sales engineer in that role, so there was definitely it's not as easy as selling something that's like the default choice, like AWS or something like that. SEs do all the work and AEs beg them to sign. SEs are insulated when it's closed loss. It's the best. I love being an SE. Yeah, I mean, it has its pros and cons. I definitely enjoyed being an SE. I think one of the favorite things I enjoyed about being an SE too is that you don't have to like you're not the one hunting down the customer, hounding them for getting a meeting set or rescheduling if they don't set it, and then pulling in all these different stakeholders. You basically just get pulled in. You get meetings on your calendar to attend, to do demos, to do presentations, and then you help them close the deal, and then after that the AE goes ahead and takes it from there. The one downside is, I guess, the earning potential is a little bit lower. Usually an SE gets like half as much commission, or even less in some cases. So, so there's like the trade-off for sure. Your manager explained like the AE is the concert promoter and the SE is the entertainment. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, usually, like, especially when you're talking to like CTOs and CISOs, like oftentimes they basically want to be talking to like technical counterparts, right? That said, if you are like a really business savvy sales, like technical sales engineer, those are the ones that I've seen that will do well moving into, maybe not like a SMB AE role, but if you move into like an enterprise or a strategic key account role where you're only managing like a few key accounts, where you're not going to be doing like a lot of prospecting or anything, then like that's when you can actually be like a really technical sales rep, and then you don't have to do all of like kind of the dirty work that the AE normally would have to do. You're scared to get started in tech sales. You just graduated from uni for life sciences and wasted time. Honestly, I mean, that first jump is kind of scary for sure. I'm not gonna lie. I was scared first moving in. I was scared leaving my first job for the next job. Um, and then in terms of like knowing like when to jump ship at a startup in tech sales, it's hard to say when, but there's a couple of key points. One would be, um, one point to make a jump would be you're getting blocked for promotions. Let's say you've been promised a promotion 2 cycles and you still haven't gotten it. In that case, that's definitely a sign that perhaps you're not in a great position where they're supporting your career growth. Another sign would be if you're just consistently not hitting your number, right? For reasons that are outside of your control, like the product isn't great, the team isn't able to deliver on the solution. So that's never a great position to be. And then the third would be if you get a really good offer, right? So it doesn't hurt to passively consider new opportunities. And if you get a new opportunity that comes along at a higher pay at a more prestigious company, then that's probably a sign to make the move there. What's my OTE? It's like I don't know. It's like 380. It fluctuates with the stock price there. You went from AE to SC, great move. Hate prospecting and pipeline management. Honestly, yeah, prospecting and pipeline management is like the worst, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of it. Managing like Salesforce or whatever CRM isn't a lot of fun. And then also, if you end up having a quarter where you're a little below your number, then that's when you get a lot more scrutiny from management. Doing like pipeline reviews and everything. So I don't blame you for making the move back to an SE role too. I've gone back and forth from AE to SE I don't know, what is it, like I did that jump like 4 times, like AE to SE, SE to AE, AE to SE, and then SE to AE again. To me though, that like the day to day of an AE and an SE varies really like a ton from company to company. So I try not to focus so much on like the title of the role, but I also look at like what are you actually going to be doing from a day to day basis. Because there's some companies where the SE is actually acting more like an AE, and then in other companies the AEs are expected to be super technical and they're essentially like an SE, and then you have like solutions architects or whatever to help you close the deals there. How can you go from AE to SE without being too technical? That's a great question. So if you want to make that jump without being too technical, the product and the company that you're selling at is going to be extremely important. So if you're selling, like I've interviewed at so many different companies in the past, but I know like, for example, what was it? MongoDB, I think, the open source, database, their SEs actually have to be very technical, very hands-on keyboard. They're coding within their demos and proof of concepts. And then there's other products where the sales engineers are more like, domain experts. So they're not actually coding or doing anything like that, but they need to know how the product actually works at a technical level without being at an engineer level, if that makes sense. So if you want to make that jump, that's going to be like the biggest consideration. What product are you going to be selling? What's the expectation of the sales engineers? Because the expectations can vary greatly for sure within that role. You have a final round interview tomorrow. Any tips? It's for an internship. Great question. Yeah, so for a final round interview, you want to come prepared with a list of questions for the hiring manager or whoever hopefully it should be your hiring manager, I guess that's on that final round interview. So you need to come in and approach it like you already got the position. You have to come in with that mindset. And the types of questions you want to come prepared with are, what do I need to do? What, like, you can specifically ask, like, what are some of the things that you've seen among your most successful sales reps on your team? What are some of the gaps, like skill gaps that you've identified? Where do you think we should place additional focus on within the territory? Those types of questions you need to basically come and answer. And the types of questions you're gonna ask are gonna depend on what you've already learned in the prior rounds of interviews. You've been a more salesy SE and also a technical SE. The role can vary greatly depending on the company. Absolutely, yeah. Domain expert was a great way to explain it. Yep, for sure. SDR hiring in this market, yeah. There still is SDR hiring in this market. If you want to find like a good way to see which companies are still hiring, because sometimes the job listings are like really out of date, look on LinkedIn, and you can search for you could just search keywords like hiring for sales and just sort by the posts on LinkedIn by the date posted, and you can see like the most recent postings. Like companies are still definitely hiring there. Do my colleagues know about TikTok? Yes, they do. Yep. Appian? I don't think so. I don't think I've heard of Appian. Oh, I didn't get my my things to update. I'm trying to become more of a legit streamer. So I'm using like OBS, and I had OBS access for TikTok. Unfortunately not. So this is streaming through the phone on TikTok, but then I have a stream going on within YouTube and then also Facebook. So let me just double check this real quick. Okay. Just a second. Learn about tech sales. This is where like I need like basically like a person just to go ahead and do these manage these streams. I don't know how these like big streamers do it. I guess maybe they just have this whole workflow built out, but let's see. What companies are best for getting into pre-sales for cloud services? So the best for sure are going to be like the big tech companies. So like Google, Amazon, Microsoft. Those are going to be the top companies. Second tier are going to be ones like Oracle, IBM. You can basically look at Gartner for the Magic Quadrant, and they basically list out what are the top public cloud companies in order. But my preference for sure would be, the Google, Amazon, Microsoft, in no specific order there. They're all pretty close. And the second tier actually would be top tier cloud partners. So each of those big three cloud companies, they have a very extensive partner ecosystem. And you can go ahead and see who the top partners are. You can reach out to those. And then a lot of people, actually, I knew quite a few people who ended up joining like the big three cloud companies after spending a bit of time at one of those resellers and integrators. Where am I reading this? So I've got, I'm reading this from, because I've got my I'm using the back camera on the iPhone. So I don't know if it actually makes a difference or not, but because of that, I've got another monitor. You can kind of, maybe you can see that here. So I've got another monitor, and then I've got the chat going on there. So that's where I'm reading from, guys. Any experience in compliance training? Not from a sales perspective, but I do have experience from taking compliance training, for sure. Pretty much every company that I've been at has some sort of compliance training that they make you take. Tips on negotiating offers. Great question. So negotiating offers. So the best way to negotiate offers is to have competing offers. So when you're going through your job application process, you really need to make sure that you're lining up your interviews as closely as possible. And what that means is you need to be prepared when you're applying for jobs. You need to treat the job application process like a sales process in itself. So before you even apply for a single position, you should essentially have at least like 30 or 40 applications lined up, ready to submit like all at the same time. Because the last thing you want to do is start interviewing for positions and then still be applying, because then what's going to happen is you're going to have too big of a gap between your interviews. And they'll when you're scheduling your interviews, they might give you a week or two to push back, but you might run into a situation where you've got you're in final round interviews and you got invited to start a new round of interviews with another company, and it's just not going to work out, because if the first company gives you an offer, then and you don't know if you're going to get an offer from the second company, then you might have to choose like, hey, maybe I really like the second company, but I don't know if they're going to be an offer or not. What do I do with the first offer? So you need to line these up as close as you can, and the goal is to get as many competing offers as you can, because that's really the best leverage for sure. The second thing is you can use resources like RepView, for example, and you can see what are some of the recent compensation figures that this company has paid, and they break down compensation based on segment and based on the company and everything like that. Fintech sales experience, long sales cycles. Yes, I've done fintech, is very long. I did machine learning for credit underwriting. So as you can imagine, the credit underwriting models are like the lifeblood of financial services companies. So the sales cycle was like 6 to 9 months or something like that. Final sales interview with Microsoft. Any tips? Well, congrats, man. If you're at the final round of interviews with Microsoft, that's definitely a good sign. So what you definitely want to do is, again, like I mentioned this earlier, come prepared with questions that you want to ask in terms of the types of questions you want to ask are the ones that you would ask like on your first day of your job. All right, so maybe that's a good way to think about it. Like, what are the types of questions you would ask your manager on the first day of your job? What do you need to do to be successful in this role? What have other successful people done in this role? What would you like to see more of your team do? What are some of the weak points of your team? Where do you think we have like the biggest gaps within our product? How can I augment that? Those are the types of questions you want to ask. So what it does is it puts the interviewer in the mindset that you're already very confident that you're going to be getting the role. They're also going to put you in that mindset as well, that you're going to be starting with them soon. You definitely want to come very excited for that. Can you make 500K working commercial, or do you need to be enterprise sales? Yeah, you can make that on the commercial side for sure. You need to have a good sales plan. So you need to have accelerators in place that would allow you to earn that type of money, but it's definitely possible. Especially at like the bigger companies where they have like a very strict like leveling system, you can actually make, you can make like the OT might even be the same across SMB, mid-market, and enterprise if you're at the same level. So it depends. You don't necessarily have to go to enterprise to make big money. Like at Google, for example, you could be on the SMB side, it was like level 4 or level 5. Enterprise, it was level 5 or level 6. So you can see there's a little bit of an overlap, right? You can be a level 5 SMB, level 5 on enterprise, and you can actually earn more if you're a high performing level 5 on SMB versus, a low performing level 6. Let's see. How likely is it to land an SDR role at the big companies? So it's definitely possible to land a role at the big companies, but they don't hire like a ton of new grads or people straight out of college or with no experience. They typically, like, entry level is relative. So entry level at those companies, like, they'll hire people at the entry level, whatever it's, either it'll be, if it's like Amazon, entry level is level 4. If it's Google, entry level is level 3. They'll hire people with up to like 4 years of experience into those entry level roles. So if you want to get in straight out of college, your best bet is to make sure you get strong internship experience, because that way at least shows that you have prior sales experience there. So you got your MBA. Remember when you posted it? Yes, I did get my MBA. I did it through the University of Illinois. It's where I got my undergrad as well. My employer paid for like 2/3 of it, so it was only like $7,000 out of pocket. For me, it was definitely worth it. I enjoyed learning about the business aspect, or learning more about business from a corporate perspective. It really gave me a better sense of perspective in terms of what other executives are thinking about in their day-to-day. That's really like the biggest thing that I got out of it. And then, it's definitely useful from a networking perspective too. This stream is better quality than my eyeballs. I'm using the back camera, which is why I'm like having to stare off to the side, because I've got like the chat going on a separate window. Hopefully it's turning out well. I also have like OBS, and I've got like my digital SLR Sony here, but they removed my stream key. It was supposed to come back. Very annoying. So you'll see when that one's up, it's gonna be even better. What tech careers would be good for autistic adults? Good question. Honestly, I've heard that that actually software engineering might be a really good fit for there. I think it kind of depends on, I mean, I don't know from personal experience, but I guess it depends on like what specific characteristics you have. But you do tend to see more neurodivergent folks within tech, mostly because like the day-to-day of the job itself can be a bit more dynamic. Like you don't always have to have a super strict schedule or anything, especially on the software development side. Or if you like working like odd hours, and it's more just about driving results versus putting in like a X number of hours per day or so on. So yeah. What should you do? Let's see. Oh, if you applied for several internships with a referral and a great resume and you haven't gotten interviews, what should you do? So if you haven't gotten interviews yet, I would definitely, shift your focus to getting referrals instead of just applying for applications or applying for positions. Chances are, most of the time, if you just apply for a position out of the blue, especially for an entry-level position, you're not going to hear back. Because those entry-level positions have a ton of applicants that are coming in. They're using an ATS system, an application tracking system, to like automatically filter out applicants based on like keywords and so on. And then also, they're also going through applicants that their recruiters are finding. So recruiters are also reaching out to prospects on LinkedIn, and they're interviewing them for those same positions. So in most cases, especially if you just apply for those positions, you're probably not going to hear anything. If anything, your response rate is going to be pretty low, maybe less than 10%. So instead, you need to be going for referrals, and you do that by going on LinkedIn, and for each position that you want to apply for, you need to find 3 to 4 people that are in a similar role at that company, and then you want to just send them a message saying like, hey, I'm looking at a position at this company. Notice that you've been there for however long. Hopefully you have like some sort of like common trait that you can relate to them with. Maybe they, the best scenario would be like they went to the same college that you did, because then you have, you can reference that. People like helping out people that have a similar background to them. So they could maybe went to the same college, from the same hometown. Maybe you liked one of their recent LinkedIn posts, for example. You can definitely reference that. If they were like a speaker at some sort of event, or if they wrote an article, another great thing to reference. So find something there, and then you want to basically build out a spreadsheet. And I have a little tracker. I actually included it in my free course for Tech Sales U. So check that on the bio if you haven't already. Just launched that like 8 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago. And one of the things that I specifically talk about, one of the weeks, so it's a 5-week course. One of the weeks specifically is about how to apply for jobs, and then having a job tracker or a way to keep your process organized is super important. And so you'll find 3 to 4 people. Not everyone's going to respond on LinkedIn. Not everyone's like always checking it, but hopefully that's going to be your in to get a referral. And when I was at Google, they put out some stats on like interview rates. I think if you didn't have a referral, you had like a less than 1% chance of getting an actual interview if you apply for a position. But getting a referral increased your chances by over 10x. So pretty substantial increase there. Let's see what kind of questions we got here. Is SDR hectic compared to car sales or like door-to-door sales? I think it's probably less hectic than car sales or door-to-door sales. It's very process orientated. So you're going to know pretty much what you need to do on a day-to-day basis. So depending on what your metrics are, you'll have to do, X number of calls per day, X number of emails. You'll have leads that you'll have to follow up on that are coming in through marketing or other inbound channels. So I would say your day-to-day is going to be actually very consistent, as opposed to, I think like door-to-door sales or car sales, that actually can vary quite a bit. You could have very slow days or very, very crazy days, or especially on car sales, right? Sometimes you could end up like working on the weekend and stuff. Quota raised 70% after hitting 130%. What's your advice on becoming the top SDR? Ooh, yeah, so that's a big quota jump. And it's unfortunate that it happens as an SDR. Usually you see those types of jumps more on like the AE side. But, advice on becoming the top SDR really is, it's all a numbers game for the most part. Even if you're like a top performing, if you've got like the best templates and emails and cold call scripts, you need to put out the right number of volume. Because if you're putting out, let's say, twice as many calls as like the other rep who has like a 10% better open rate, you're gonna have like significantly better results. So Hey Tom, what keeps you going? Doing tech sales, TikTok. Honestly, on the TikTok side, what keeps me going is I get a lot of great positive messages from people who have told me that they were able to get into an entry-level tech sales role and they're thriving in it, and they learned about the career specifically because of my content, or they used it to get through the interview process. So that's the type of stuff that keeps me going. Me personally, my parents both immigrated from Poland. So I was the first generation born in Chicago, actually. They came over in their 20s. They didn't have any college education. They didn't know English or anything. So I always just went to, had a pretty, modest upbringing, went to public schools. And I never knew too much about the tech industry. I didn't have any connections. Me personally, I kind of like fell into the sales role itself. I had no idea about what the earning potential was. Um, so really what keeps me going is I know there's a ton of people that are like kind of in the same position that I was in. And so I just enjoy just bringing transparency and talking about it. I used to post a lot more about like car stuff. That's what I initially did with my YouTube channel that I kind of started. I think it was back in like 2017 or something. And also on TikTok, I first started on the car stuff. But I just enjoy kind of like the coaching, mentoring aspects. So that's what keeps me going there. What advice do I have for closing my first deal, or your first 250 to 500K deal? Yeah, so best advice for closing that type of deal is you really need to understand the sales process. So you need to know who all the proper stakeholders are. Make sure you have a very good understanding of like their buying process. You need to know who's gonna be involved on the decision. So you need to basically master that whole sales piece, because it's when you're looking at a 250 to 500K deal, there's gonna be quite a few people that are gonna be involved. It's not just a single person that's making a decision. You're most likely gonna have a proof of concept or pilot that you gotta go through. So, and you need to plan out that whole thing. So that really that's what you need to do. Well, thanks for the comments, guys. Yeah, as a first-gen student, first-gen kid, content started making me. Your content started me making the move. Yeah, I mean that's what I'd love to hear for sure. There's actually one person I remember specifically. He reached out to me on Instagram. He was also in Chicago. We went to grab a coffee or whatever right around the corner, and he just had a kid, and I'm trying to remember what job it was. But he was only making, I think he was making like 40 or 42K or something a year. It was a little bit rough for their family, but he saw my content. He really wanted to make the move. Gave him some like very specific advice, and then he messaged me. What was it? I think it was like 4 or 5 months afterwards. Asking to take me out, for dinner or whatever as a thank you, because he was able to go from like that 40K job. And he landed an SDR position that was paying, it was like 80K. So basically double his pay. And it was like life-changing for his family. So for me, it was awesome to hear that. And I've gotten like a ton of other messages like that too. Saw a dude at Cisco making 650K in a single quarter. Oh yeah, 650. I believe it, especially if they've got like year-end accelerators or year-end quotas. I mean, you could have. I know several people that have had like 7-figure years. Would you recommend applying to AE roles as an SDR or wait until you promote internally? Great question. So almost always, I usually recommend waiting until you get promoted. And then because when you're going to be interviewing for AE positions, they're going to be typically asking you questions about, how do you manage your own territories? What's your process for managing opportunities? And those are the types of things that you're not going to really have like experience with as an SDR. That said, it doesn't hurt to try. And if you get the interview and if you get a position, then then for sure it's just going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. So the other thing is you might end up getting an offer for an SDR position as an SDR at another company. And usually I don't recommend making that move, because you're going to basically restart that promotion process where it's, it's about like 1 to 2 years to get promoted from an SDR to an AE. But the only time I would really consider that would be maybe the current company that you're at right now isn't a company that you want to be an AE at. And perhaps the SDR position is at like a top tier company. So it's like if your goal is to be like an enterprise AE at one of the big cloud tech companies, then it's significantly easier to get in as an SDR and get promoted up versus trying to get in as an AE. So that's the one exception to the rule where it might worth making more of a lateral move as an SDR to a different company. Tom, can you hit 500K at a startup, or do you have better odds at a bigger company? No, you can definitely do it at a startup. So, but the thing is, you're typically not going to hit 500K unless you blow out your quota. For the enterprise level, if you're at an enterprise AE, typically it's about 300K OTE at the upper end. So 150K base, 150 commission for your annual pay at a startup. And then they're going to give you stock or equity, but because it's a startup, that's not, it doesn't have a cash value really associated with it until they have um, like until they go public or they get acquired by another company, which is definitely not a guarantee. But if you're at the 300K number, in my experience, it's easier to blow out your quota at a startup versus one of the bigger companies where they have their quotas more dialed in. But on the flip side, at the bigger companies, they're going to give you usually a substantial amount of stock. Like when I was at Google, it was actually a fairly low level position. They gave me 160K in stock over 4 years. And that was when I, just basically first started there. And by the time I left, that stock had grown over 2x. So, so essentially you had, about 80K a year in stock, and that was on top of your OTE. So if you get up to like a 300K OTE number, and then and then you add on 2 to 3 years of stock grants at one of the public cloud companies, then you actually will be pretty close to that 500K number. So long story short, I would say you have your chances of having like a really high earning year is going to be higher at a startup, but you'll probably consistently make more money at one of the big tech companies. Can tech sales make more money than a software engineer? Absolutely. So it depends on your level for the most part. So I mean, you can make more money as a recruiter than a software engineer too, right? So I mean, that question really depends on what companies are you looking at and what level is the individual at too. So at Google, for example, also at Amazon, when I was at Amazon, we had like a bunch of like pay transparency worksheets that were being shared where people were sharing their pay across level, across location, across job family. And I mean, you might be surprised to hear it, but for the most part, every job at the same level pretty much pays the same across, marketing, sales, software engineering. The one exception was, I think, software engineers, they've received a little bit more stock, or they received more stock than the other jobs at the same level. So because of that, like their total pay was a little bit higher, but it wasn't significantly higher. And it wasn't to the point where like a senior level person on the business side, they would be earning more, significantly more than like a low level engineer. So I would say it depends on like if you really want to make a lot of money at those companies, you need to be in a job that you'll actually thrive in. It doesn't make sense to go into software engineering just to make more money if you don't actually have like the mindset or the capacity to do well in that job to actually get promoted and move up the ladder. Thoughts on sales at the big four accounting companies like Accenture or PwC? So both of those, they have like pretty big sales teams for like their implementation side, for the professional services side. So they work closely with all the big cloud companies. So yeah, I think it's similar to like any of the other resellers or partners. Some people actually prefer those types of roles than the big cloud companies. El Patron Suave, thanks for hopping on. He's one of like the big TechSalesTom subscribers. So that's why he's got that cool little badge next to his name. So is 650 dials a lot per week? If you have an auto dialer, I don't think it's too bad. If you have to like manually dial 650 numbers per week, which ends up being about like 120 per day or something, that's definitely going to be quite a lot. But if it's an auto dialer, I think that's probably fine. Is AWS or Microsoft better for cloud services? I'm going to say Microsoft. Amazon has a few some they've got a few quirks. The biggest thing that Amazon has against them is that Amazon as a whole has other businesses and so many other industries that they end up kind of creating conflicts of interest for their cloud customers. Like a lot of retailers will not work with AWS because they don't want to support like their biggest competitor within the industry, and there's so many other parallels there. Microsoft also, in my opinion, has much better enterprise relationship managing skills, right? So they've been in the enterprise software game for a very, very long time, so they know how to do that. You remember when I posted about the 200K commission when I was at AWS? Yeah, I was at AWS when that happened. Yep. That was basically at Amazon. We do, we have quarterly commissions or quarterly quotas, and then we also have a year-end quota, but you don't actually end up hitting accelerators until you hit your annual number. So for me, the Q4 check, which hit in Q1 of this year, that was a big one. If I don't mind sharing what company I'd recommend working for, there's a lot. I mean, there's a ton. Look at RepView. Look at like the top rated companies. Look at, I would say focus on ones that have like a RepView score of at least a 90 out of 100. All right. Well, these were all great questions. I'm gonna have to start wrapping it here, but I'm gonna post this on YouTube. If you guys didn't catch this, I posted some of my other lives on YouTube as well. That's where I post all of them, so you can see that in my bio. The YouTube channel is just TechSalesTom. So I do all the live streams, so feel free to check it out. If you want to ask me any other questions, send me a message. But actually, the best way to get a quick answer from me is to respond on my most recent video. It helps me on an engagement perspective, and then also everyone else who's following the channel, they're looking at the most recent video. A lot of the questions do end up getting repeated across different people as well. If you want to break into tech sales, you don't need to pay for a really expensive boot camp or anything like that. I spent a lot of time and energy working with Bravado to put together a totally free 5-week self-paced course called Tech Sales U. Feel free to check that out too. Literally, it tells you everything that you need to know in terms of getting an overview of the industry, how to interview for these positions, negotiating the job, and so on. So go ahead and check that out too if you haven't already. And then tips for moving up as an SDR. Maybe that's the last question I'll hit. So really the biggest tip is you need to be a top performer, right? So make sure you're on top of all of your core metrics. So make sure you really know how your performance is being measured. Are they measuring you based on the number of opportunities that you're generating? Are they measuring you based on your activity? Are they measuring you on revenue that's being closed from those opportunities? It's going to depend on the company. Every manager measures it differently. So make sure you know how you're being measured. Make sure you know how you're stacking against your peers. You want to be in like the top 20% of your peers, right? Promotions are mostly merit-based for the most part within sales. So you need to be a top performer. And in order to be a top performer, you need to know exactly how much activity you need to do on a daily basis. So depending on what your conversion rates are, break that down, work backwards, and figure out how many calls and how many emails do I need to do per day to hit that goal. So hopefully that helped. If you guys have any other questions, again, feel free to message, send a comment, and I'll be on next week as well. I might do another live later this week. Normally I do Wednesday lives too, so I'll try to do one tomorrow. Hopefully I'll get like OBS going here and to do the stream. So, but yeah, thanks again, everyone. Hope you have a great day or a great night.